Hello and welcome to my Advanced Speed Efficiency Guide. This video is the sequel for my first speed efficiency guide, so if you have not seen that, I would recommend checking that out first, as it will be referenced throughout this one. In this video, I will be delving a bit deeper into how you can start to optimize this efficient playstyle. The first video covers a strong basis of the idea, whereas these more advanced strategies are more to clean up the last remaining improvements on the journey towards the perfect Minesweeper gameplay. At this stage, the definition between speed efficiency and playing full efficiency becomes a bit more blurry, the difference mainly being how you execute on these concepts. To start with, I need to talk about no flag. Remember previously when I said no flag was always a one click to one clear ratio? It's nice and simple to say that's a rule, but that's not actually always the case. Which leads us to what this section is really about, the highly requested topic of openings. You know everyone's favorite thing in the game where it does this? This happens when you uncover an empty square with no mines directly around it, and it opens up all of the surrounding squares up until the numbered cells. The key part of this is that this can be done with one click, and will therefore always be better than committing a new chord, since that would take at least one flag and one click. Clicking a chord that clears an empty square will always give the same result as left-clicking said empty square. The whole reason why you can take only favourable chords and end with less than 100% efficiency is because any extra clicks used to clear cells that an opening would have opened for you are considered inefficient by the game. Therefore, unless the flags have already been placed, being able to find and left-click these openings will be the more efficient option. Now, the problem we run into is that these openings are not exactly labelled for us, and are often not certainties, so if we want to be saving these clicks, we need to know how and when to find them. One thing that helped me think about openings is considering the openings as the zero squares. They aren't actually labelled with a zero, they're just blank, but that is what they represent. Zero mines immediately around them. With this in mind, let's start with when you can find the openings that are guaranteed. Guaranteed openings are always going to be found around the edge of the board. When a number one space away from the edge is cleared by mines 2 spaces away from the edge space next to this number is always going to be clear of any mines, making it a zero and therefore an opening. The most typical example of this that you will come across is this L-shaped pattern of ones against an edge. With this mine here, you can see that all of these are free, meaning that this cell will always be an opening. Even if it looks like a nice chord in some sense, since this chord will only be hitting an opening, flagging will actually be a waste. So, if you ever come across any form of this scenario, you should be left-clicking this square for its guaranteed opening. Here's some more examples of different variations of a guaranteed opening. We can see that this 2 is satisfied by these 2 being mines, meaning that these will be cleared and this will be an opening. Here we can see that this one will be satisfied by a mine in either of these, meaning that these will be cleared and this will be an opening. And finally, one more example where a 2 is satisfied here, making this cell on the edge an opening. Venturing into the realms of uncertainties, instead of knowing a square will be a 0, you have to look for the squares that can potentially be a 0, which might be more common than you think. All that you need to do is find a square that is not next to any of your known mines. Let's go through a couple of examples. Here, we can see that there are mines here, here, and if we extrapolate a bit, here. So if we were to eliminate all of the ones next to these mines, these 2 are left over as potentially next to no mines, and therefore potential openings. However, they're not quite the same. Given the information that we know, in order for this square to be an opening, we need all 3 of these to not be a mine. In order for this square to be an opening, we are relying on the chance that all 5 of these are not a mine. So to find the best chances for an opening, you want to be clicking the ones next to the lowest amount of unknown cells. For one more example, seeing that there are mines both here and here, it leaves us with just this square with the chance of an opening, relying on the chance that just these two cells are not mines. As these examples showcased, some situations are more unlikely to open than others, since they require more unknown cells to not be mines. Personally, through playing a lot and trying out openings, I gained a feel for how often they worked, but it is possible to put numbers to. This is dependent on the individual boards, so it will vary a bit if you like to play different sized boards than these standard ones. So something like this that needs 3 cells to be non-mines has a 50% chance for success on expert and 60.1% for intermediate. And something like this, which needs 4 cells to be non-mines, has a 39.7% chance of success for expert and 50.7% for intermediate. And etc. Although these are all possible, basically every potential opening that you come across will be a 2, 3, or 5 cell variant. From my experience, I have narrowed it down to the following general rules. A situation requiring 2 unknown cells to be clear is worth to try for on expert, whereas a situation requiring 3 unknown cells to be clear, which are the most common, tend to not be worth the risk. For intermediate, the common 3 cell situations are generally worth an attempted opening. This might sound overly complicated to be able to apply in a speed setting, but these openings do appear in a lot of the same ways and become patterns of their own. Another thing to note when it comes to openings, if you are clearing with no flag, even if it is not necessarily a likely place for an opening, since you are left clicking them all anyway, it can pay off to prioritize clicking the potential 0 square. This is a great common example for where you can use this trick. When you are given a gap like this to go behind with, you may default to clearing like this. Whereas clicking this one first could find you an opening and clear all the others for you automatically. Now for the next topic, let's return to flagging and go a bit deeper this time. Back in the first video, everything that was explained was essentially going off the idea that each bit of logic that you solve is treated individually for you to work out whether to flag or no flag. However, in reality, these pieces of logic are all together on the same board, and your flagging does not just affect that one part in isolation. This is the reason why, in that video, I said that an easy solution to record whether flag and no flag options are equal is to default to flagging, because there is a chance that you can use a flag for future logic. As you can see here, this section would have required 2 flags to clear these 3, but the previous chord means that we only need to place 1 to enable the new chord, because they both share a mine. This leads you to the idea that not every flag has the same value. Higher value flags will be flags that have potential to be used more than once, and lower value flags will be more isolated and less connected to further logic. Here are some examples of how one flag can have higher value than another, even though both follow the same efficiency rules from the first video. Flagging here will be able to be used twice, for this chord and this chord. Whereas flagging here is confirmed to be able to be used for this chord and then never again. For clearing these two, you could flag either here or here. Flagging on the right is again confirmed to be useful for a second chord, and also has more potential than the left flag for a good chord after clearing these two, due to these extra known mine cells hindering the other side. Finding and choosing the flags and chords that cover the results and more of a different flag and chord can go a long way for your efficiency. However, it is also common to not be certain that the flag can be used again, but still holds potential. For this example, the right flag doesn't necessarily have future chords, but has much more potential than the left flag due to being more central and currently less restricted by mines. You might not know what the future holds for your flags, but the ones with more uncleared cells around them are going to have more opportunities to be used again, and should be prioritized over the single-use flags. In general, flags and chords deeper and surrounded by more uncleared cells are likely to be more valuable. The examples shown before, and other variations of these, are the most simple and clear-cut applications of this, but bearing this in mind in the general sense while you play can elevate the quality of your chord clearing. This concept also gives an added perspective to how strong a flagging option may be, to help you decide between any other options available to you. Speaking of, let's move on to the final concept of what I call fishing. I'm pretty sure there exists a more technical name for this somewhere, but this is how I have always thought of it. Given a piece of Minesweeper to solve, you might start thinking about what the best option is to clear the situation. However, there's another question you can ask. Can I improve the situation? Let's consider the scenario where clicking on this number reveals a 1. Suddenly we have a juicy chord to take, and by opting into that first click and reassessing, we have improved the overall clear. Similarly to how finding openings relies on finding zeros, fishing relies on finding good potential chords. The most common and easiest way to first consider this is finding potential 1s. This, in my opinion, is much more intuitive than openings. Identifying where the mines are as you normally do, any uncleared cell around them that's not connected to any other known mine can be a potential 1. Generally, if the given options aren't very high value, any cell that is next to a mine that you can think, it would be really nice if that was a 1, can be an opportunity to fish for this better chord. Here are some examples of me fishing for 1s. This also encourages a mindset which can improve your play as a whole, of considering steps ahead and having good awareness of the game state. I will clarify that in this video I will only be referring to known safe cells when considering these options. You might have noticed that you can get some real nice what-ifs by gambling on potentially unsafe cells, but especially for speed efficiency, this risk is not worth it. Another thing to consider is that we're really chasing better chords, not necessarily 1s. With a more complete awareness, you can also start to find some examples where you can fish for a higher number. With good chords generally being on lower numbers, most of these will be looking for 2s. Here's a couple of examples of me fishing for a 2. Here we can see that we have no good chord and would just be clearing with no flag. However, given this one has already been flagged, if this were a 2, then we would have a new chance of clearing with a strong chord. Similarly here, no chords or even openings to go for, but given we know there are mines here and here, if this were a 2, then we then have a new favourable chord to take. Make sure that when you are looking for better chords, you are looking for squares surrounded by a lot of uncleared cells for the ones with the best potential. The chance of success does go down the more cells that need to be clear, using the same odds as the openings, but with this the potential does increase, which can be something you can weigh up if you ever have multiple options. And now that I have covered all of these concepts, the big question now becomes how to properly apply them all. You can have a circumstance where there's the option for more than one of these things at the same time, the decision made even more difficult given how each can have some element of potential uncertainty involved. Consider this Minesweeper scenario. We have a 2 flag chord for 3 clear scenario, so even value. Here we have a potential opening at a 31.5% chance of success. And we also have a potential 1 here and here that we could fish for. But if we were to chord normally, these potential 1s also mean that these flags could have good value. Each of these strategies have a circumstance where they lead to the most efficient clear, so how to know which angle to go for. Everyone will have their own playstyle and preferences, so some part of it will be figuring out what works best for you. However, to make things easier for you, I have put together some general priority rules to give you a strong basis for the most effective way of playing. If you have an opening opportunity of above 50% chance, left click on the opening. If there is an opening present, any move not immediately left clicking into it will be losing efficiency. So when there's an adequate chance, you should go for the opening. Secondly, if it is worth it to flag, using the rule set from the first video, you should flag and chord. This is going to be a large amount of your clearing. Despite other good options, it turns out having flags available to reuse throughout the board ends up being the most valuable, as well as its uncertainty coming from whether you can get high value out of the future use of the flags, giving it the best fail case and making it the most reliable option. If chording is unfavorable, then your next click should be fishing for a good chord. Where you would have previously moved on to clear the area with no flag, you can instead select your first click to potentially reveal a good chord to switch to. Next up is left-clicking the opening opportunity with less than 50% chance. Similarly, this is when you will be clearing no flag, but first selecting the click which has a potential of finding an opening. Finally is just clearing no flag. This system mostly outlines what I've developed personally to give me the best efficiency results, but it isn't flawless. Since chording is more or less the default, there are some edge cases that crop up where trying for an opening or fishing can sneak ahead in value. For example, if you have an even value chord and the flags involved are low value and won't be used again, fishing or even trying for an opening can have higher value. Or if you have a situation where there's a 50% chance for an opening, and it would cost you the placement of more than one flag to chord, the number of clicks wasted will be higher if it does turn out to open, meaning fishing for a better chord or going for the opening become better options. This is where, on top of following the rules, having a good understanding of how things work is always valuable to help you develop. A couple of extra notes I would like to mention. Because of the chance-based nature, there will be times where you make an attempt to fish, or find an opening, which does not succeed. This should not be a surprise to you, and it is helpful to be prepared for failure, and know what your following moves will be for both a successful and unsuccessful click. Planning ahead is another really useful skill to develop, and being prepared to continue to no flag after seeking an opening or better chord is an accessible way to do this. Lastly, given all of these methods, it is expected that any efficiency rule set that you develop will deteriorate to some extent when going quickly. Considerations and tendencies that you make for the sake of speed will clash, but if you're proficient with your efficiency options, you can still find a good match between being fast and efficient. That takes us to the end of the video. At this point, this is pretty much all that I apply to my own games, but if you would ever like to watch how I put it into practice or ask me any questions about anything, you can occasionally catch me streaming at twitch.tv/darthong. I hope you found this video helpful. All relevant links will be in the description, and thanks for watching.